Hello, everyone. This is Inside the Americas. Coming up, Russia's invasion of Ukraine dominating news around the world this week, including in the Americas. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky telling the U.S. Congress his country needs a no-fly zone to stop the murder of innocent civilians now. And Colombia's left-wing coalition makes major gains in the parliamentary election there. We'll take a closer look at former guerrilla Gustavo Petro, the leftist candidate who's now the one to watch in the presidential race coming up in May. Well, as Russia continues to bombard Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky made a landmark virtual address to the U.S. Congress this week. American lawmakers giving the Ukrainian president a standing ovation the moment he showed up on screen. Speaking almost 3 weeks after the Russian invasion first began, Zelensky showed a graphic video of the victims of the war, begging the U.S. and NATO to intervene directly to stop Russian attacks. Zelensky spoke directly to the American people and referred to the 2001 terror attack, saying Ukraine has been experiencing a 9/11 every day for 3 weeks. Here's more of what he had to say.
Remember Pearl Harbor. Terrible morning of December 7, 1941, when your sky was black from the planes attacking you. Just remember it. Remember September the 11th, a terrible day in 2001, when evil tried to turn your cities, independent territories, in battlefields, when innocent people were attacked from air. Yes, just like no one else expected it. You could not stop it. Our country experiences the same every day, right now, at this moment, every night, for 3 weeks now. Various Ukrainian cities, Odessa and Kharkiv, Chernihiv and Sumy, Zhytomyr and Lviv, Mariupol and Dnipro. Russia has turned the Ukrainian sky into a source of death.
And while the U.S. is still very wary of a no-fly zone that could provoke a bigger direct conflict with Russia, Washington did offer a new round of security assistance to Ukraine. That includes another $800 million worth of military aid, with more of the anti-tank and anti-aircraft missiles that have helped slow Russia's 3-week-old invasion to a crawl. The package brings the total aid announced in the last week alone to $1 billion. We'll take you now to Brighton Beach in New York, home to the highest concentration of Russian-speaking immigrants in the U.S., many of them Jewish. The area is nicknamed Little Odessa after the Ukrainian port city on the Black Sea. France 24's Jessica Lemazurier went to talk to Ukrainian Jewish pensioners who fled persecution both during and after World War II. They say Russian President Vladimir Putin's claim that he is denazifying Ukraine is a twisted lie.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine has made Holocaust survivors living here in Brighton Beach relive their trauma. After World War II, a large Jewish population settled here. At the nearby Kings Bay Y Community Centre, Jewish pensioners discussed the war. Pavel Averbuch is a Holocaust survivor. He was just 6 years old in 1941 when he fled on the last boat out of Odessa.
Вы знаете, сердце обливается кровью, когда я смотрю на вот эти все дела, на слезы детей, негодяев, всех надо судить, потому что они буквально уничтожают, молодое поколение уничтожают.
Только люди, которые зомбированы, многие в России сейчас зомбированы телевизором. Это так же, как немцы были во время, фашисты сумели их зомбировать, немецкую нацию.
Это геноцид. Развязана война с государством, независимым, многомиллионным, размером с Францию. Развязана война, идет война. Развязал ее один человек, все знают кто.
На моих глазах он строился в Киеве, и мы просто были, конечно, очень рады, что наконец-то память о всех погибших будет перед нами. И когда я узнал, что именно была бомбежка в Бабий Яр, это было просто ужасно. Это и Самое обидное, что это кто бомбил Бабий Яр? Те, которые защищали свою страну от фашистов. У меня не укладывается в голове до сих пор, как Россия могла пойти воевать с Украиной. Это братские народы.
What pains Holocaust survivors here more than anything is having to watch what they call a fratricidal war and feeling powerless to do anything about it.
Next, now to Colombia, where centrist presidential candidate Ingrid Betancourt, leftist candidate Gustavo Petro, and center-right candidate Federico Gutierrez held their first debate in the capital this week. That came after Sunday's parliamentary election that saw the left-wing coalition make major gains in the polls. The left held a primary at the same time as the legislative vote, and it was former guerrilla Gustavo Petro who came out as the one to watch in the presidential election May 29th. Olivia Salazar-Winspear takes a look.
Could he be Colombia's first ever leftist leader? Senator Gustavo Petro's emerging as the frontrunner in the country's upcoming presidential election, after he secured victory in the primary of the left-wing Historical Pact coalition with 4.5 million votes.
The time has come for us to be a world power for life. Let's go forward. It's time for victory. It's time for victory to win in the first presidential round. Long live the Historical Pact. Long live Colombia as a world power for life.
A former mayor of Bogotá, Petro was runner-up to right-wing president incumbent Iván Duque in 2018. Since then, analysts say that Colombia's political center of gravity has shifted left, following a regional trend as socialist leaders take the reins in Chile, Peru and Honduras. Indeed, distrust of the left in Colombia has traditionally been linked to the country's decades-long civil conflict with the FARC and other rebel groups. A former guerrilla himself, Petro hopes to revive the stalled peace process that officially ended the war in 2016, yet which has so far failed to resolve all territorial disputes and persistent outbreaks of violence.
Today, the majority in Colombia must stand with those of us who want to leave the war completely behind, build an era of peace, and leave those who want to continue to tear peace to shreds in isolation.
When it comes to the economy, Petro's pushing for a shift away from oil and gas extraction and wants to replace those revenues with income from tourism in a bid to see Colombia's wealth distributed more evenly. And his environmental credentials should be boosted by fellow leftist Francia Marquez, a respected activist and campaigner who missed out on the nomination in the primary, but who's likely to be a major feature of any Petro government.
And as Colombia gears up for its presidential election in May, the country is seeing an upsurge in conflict between different armed groups. That's the case in the department of Arauca on the border of Venezuela. ELN guerrillas and FARC dissidents there are fighting for control of the region, which is both rich in oil and strategic when it comes to trafficking cocaine. Over the past few months, dozens of civilians and social leaders caught in the crossfire have been killed. Paul Cabanese and Stephen Cotter report.
In Colombia's small eastern town of Saravena, the streets are cordoned off. Its residents live in fear of car bombs. The last one targeted the building where Sonia and Juan Carlos worked. It was January 19th. A car bomb targeted the headquarters of this left-wing political movement. Sonia and Juan Carlos are the leaders of this political organization. On the evening of the explosion, they had gathered about 60 social leaders. These stone-filled barrels blocked the street and saved their lives.
We think they wanted to bring the car in through here, and it would have been a disaster.
The attack left 1 dead and 5 injured. Authorities blame it on dissidents from the ex-guerrilla group, the FARC. Their enemies? Another guerrilla group, the National Liberation Army, or the ELN, which has been present in the region for 3 decades.
They say that some of the social leaders are part of an urban faction of the National Liberation Army.
The two armed groups are waging a merciless war. The goal? To control this city, a strategic area for the multiple types of trafficking that passes through the Arauca River on the border with Venezuela. At the town hall, Jose Luis is the only civil servant dedicated to protecting the basic rights of the population. Escorted by this motorcycle bodyguard, he is overwhelmed with calls for help. This time, it's this neighborhood representative and his wife who have faced threats.
It's very difficult. We were having lunch a few days ago and she broke down in tears. I'm afraid we don't go out of our house anymore. And my neighbors are going through the same thing.
Since the beginning of the year, the conflict has left about 100 people dead in this border region.
These guerrilla groups need to understand that if you have life plans here, it's not because you're allied with an armed group, but simply because you were born here.
As if in response to the territorial graffiti of the guerrilla groups, paintings have appeared on the walls of Saravena, symbols of a population caught in a crossfire, in a plea that these armed groups finally make peace.
That wraps it up for this Inside the Americas. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time for all the news from north to south.